Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Alison, and in this video I'm going to explain to you how I help to heal my son's eczema. Before I do, remember to like, subscribe, share, comment and hit that notification so you know when the next video is coming out. Now first of all, I want to point out that I'm not a medical practitioner, I'm not a doctor, I am simply a mother who had massive concerns for her son's well-being and skin health. With that being said, I didn't completely cure my son's eczema. What I did is I helped to heal it and stop it from reoccurring on a regular basis. The first changes I made were to do an exclusion diet. And before I could do that, for at least the first 2 weeks, I actually just monitored his diet by using a food journal. In the previous videos, you have access to a free food journal as well. After monitoring my son's diet for 2 weeks, I then started implementing changes. So I removed all the known eczema triggers. The triggers included gluten, which is wheat, rye and barley. They included all types of dairy milk, whether they be cow, goat or sheep. I removed eggs, soya, sugar, oily fish temporarily and even nuts, even though I did know he didn't have any reactions to nuts. We also stopped him having chocolate for a short period of time. Now, over a period of about 8 to 10 weeks, I reintroduced one of those at a time to see if he reacted. And luckily for us, he didn't actually react to many of the foods, but the foods he definitely reacted to, for sure, were all dairy, including sheep, cow and goat. He reacted to sugar as well, specifically processed sugar and fruit juices as well. And he reacted a little bit to soya, but that only tended to play up when he actually had his eczema flare happening, and sometimes, but not always, to gluten, and that's only when he was having stomach problems. Now, as eczema sufferers, we are all unique, so what might trigger for one person won't necessarily trigger for another. Now, what I did find through trial and error and looking back on my child's history and also my daughter was what the actual initial triggers were, so what the root causes of the eczema were. What we found was because number one, my son was a C-section birth. Number two, he was premature. Number three, he had a lot of antibiotics when he was born because of illness. And number four, did I say 3 or 4? I can't remember. He also was bottle fed. So those things didn't help. Now, I believe by not being a natural birth, he's not picking up the correct bacteria, which means he's more susceptible to allergens and allergies. And by having antibiotics, that definitely wiped out the gut bacteria. So whereas you have good and bad bacteria in your gut, antibiotics, although they do fight infection, they remove all bacteria from your gut. And it's like wiping out a rainforest with a forest fire. The fire doesn't discriminate between what is needed in the rainforest, the good stuff, and then all the bad stuff. It wipes everything out, and it can take up to 2 years for bacteria in your gut to replenish without the use of probiotics, so it's worth knowing that. When I had addressed the issues of what foods were causing his body to actually trigger and have eczema, I also had to look at skin products. Now, initially I'd been using prescribed skin creams that were hypoallergenic. They were prescribed because they had no fragrance in there and they were supposed to be helping dry skin. Now, he did react to these eventually, which is why we switched to using natural products only. And it was in switching to natural skincare products that I made the choice to try an exclusion diet, which made all the difference, those two things combined. Now, because I'd already looked at what he was eating and what skincare we were using, so we were now using only natural oils and butters, and I created that myself, hence the name Tigs and New Naturals. Because we had already addressed the skincare and the food, we then looked at supplementation. Now, the first thing we looked at was probiotics, because I wanted to replenish the good bacteria in his gut. We also looked at prebiotics. Now, prebiotics you don't need to get from supplements, you can get those from the food you eat. And all the prebiotic is, and what it does, is it boosts the probiotic or the good bacteria in the gut. By not having sugar and dairy in his diet, it also meant that he was having less of the bad bacteria, and also by not having processed foods anymore. We were predominantly eating only wholesome and whole grain foods. So lots of fruit, lots of vegetables, lots of drinking water as well. Once I'd addressed what he was eating, what he was drinking, what he was using on his skin, and what we were putting into the body to actually help the gut, I also looked at vitamins. Now, my son did have a blood test, and that did show he was deficient in vitamin D, which is a sunshine vitamin, so we had to get supplements for that. And he was also shown to be deficient in vitamin B12. When we did see the consultant, they did tell us to get a multivitamin, but when I had explained he'd been taking a multivitamin and was still deficient, he'd been taking the infant's Abidec, which is the vitamins A, B, D and C, and also I think it has zinc and magnesium in there, but that wasn't doing enough for him at all. So once we realized, he was also deficient in iron as well. My son wasn't a massive meat eater and still isn't, so we had to make sure he was getting iron from the vegetables and the fruit he was eating. So we had to address those issues by buying individual vitamins. So I made sure I was getting good quality vitamins, and I did speak to and I got help from a naturopath at this point. Now, what we also looked at was washing his clothes with, the actual laundry liquid. I stopped using fabric conditioner because they were fragranced, and we switched to the eco-friendly laundry liquid. So he was having his clothes washed separately. Once I addressed that issue, I then looked at his bed linen. That's where I learned about bamboo bed linen and also tencel. So on my son's bed, he does have only bamboo sheets, and sometimes on his pillowcase he has satin, and that is just because it's slippy against his face, and so it doesn't absorb or remove the moisture away from his body like cotton can do. Now, to help my son and also to help myself, I stopped using anything with a fragrance in it unless it was essential oils. So I stopped using perfumes as well. Stopped using antiperspirants that were fragranced, which is where we made the choice to switch to deodorants and use deodorants with either essential oils or unfragranced completely. I then addressed the issue of the air, the pollution in the air in the actual house. So we got rid of air fresheners because, again, they are synthetic. When you spray them in the air, they linger in the air, and they also settle on soft furnishings, and then you're then sitting on them, The other thing I looked at was his bedroom. Now, because my son's bedroom happens to be the hottest room in the house because we have a chalet style house, and the heat rises up, and he also has the boiler beside his bedroom, I had to put in a fan in his bedroom, one that oscillates. We then have the fan which is directly on his skin if he gets really, really warm, as well as sleeping on bamboo bed linen. He sleeps in his underwear. We have the window open. We have a air humidifier in there, so it puts moisture back into the air. The central heating doesn't need to be on in his room at all because his room is that warm. And recently we got the air purifier, so the air is being cleaned. Now, the other thing that I do for his bedroom, because he likes the light on anyway, because we have a salt lamp. So again, research is still out on whether salt lamps work or not, but they do put ions back into the air, negative ions, ion particles, which means they are helping in some way or form. It's a solid salt lamp, it's a solid lump of salt, but it also has a really nice glow. We have one with a dimmer switch, so it can be really, really low in the night, but it doesn't mean he's got something to look at. It's almost like hypnotic in a way, it helps him to fall asleep, but it doesn't mean I'm doing everything possible to get his room ready for his eczema. The last thing we do is when we moisturise him, or he moisturises himself now, because he's old enough, after a bath or shower, he also moisturises before he gets to bed, which reduces the possibility of having the itch at night. Now, when it comes to stress, obviously stress can be a trigger for eczema as well. You don't expect children to get too stressed, but one thing I do at night is I make sure he has no electronics being used at least 2 hours before bedtime. So, well, he does still watch some TV, try not to get him too stressed, but I don't allow phones. I don't allow his Xbox. He's not allowed to play games at least 2 hours before. That, number one, it stops the blue light from damage or emitting and causing sleep deprivation or problems sleep, but it also means he's not getting stressed when he's playing games. Now, I will end this video by saying I am not Mother Teresa, I'm not Mary Poppins. His eczema is never going to be gone completely because it's obviously, it's now his genetics, it's in his blood, it's part of him, it's part of his DNA. But we do know how to relieve it when it comes back, which does not very often, luckily. We do find that his eczema only bad in the winter because he's going from the cold air outside and the wind into the actual dry air of the house, which is why we use humidifiers around the house. But also in the summertime, pollen triggers his eczema as well. However, rather than panicking like I used to and grabbing the Piriton or some kind of antihistamine, what I tend to do is I mix our natural body butter moisturiser with a little bit of neem oil, and the neem oil stops the itch. In fact, it works that well that when he last got a flare-up, and he didn't realise he had the flare-up, he was itching out his skin. I saw what he was doing. I combined some moisturising body oils and butters with the neem oil, rubbed it on his skin, and the next day the itch had gone. Now, because the itch had gone, we'd forgotten the actual eczema was there, so for a few days we didn't use the neem oil, so the eczema stayed around. It was only when I remembered and carried on using the neem oil for 2 weeks, every single evening and every morning, that the eczema went away completely, but the itch was already gone after day 1. So there's a little hint for you. Now, I hope you found the video useful. Now remember, I am simply a mother. I am not a doctor, I'm not a practitioner, but I have got a lot of experience on how to fix my own eczema and my son's eczema. So I do hope you found it useful. Remember to like, subscribe, share, comment, and hit that notification, and I will see you on the next video. Bye for now.